I'll go pick him up right now. The maid named Rose tells her young masters who are gathering around a table. She bows before leaving the room and grabs a particular person the girls need, a powerful entity that will mentor and hone them to perfection for an ultimate goal. But who is that, and what exactly is the objective of the gathering? Whoever and whatever may that be, this tension is not what you call celebration. Or is it? Before we get to the interesting part in the mansion's room, a competition is taking place in the Royal Lux Martial Arts and Magic Academy, where two students are trying to overwhelm one another with their strength and swordsmanship. Among the crowd of entertained spectators, the one standing out the most is the commoner high school teacher, Frey Garnett, whom we will call Frey, secretly cheering for the girl competitor named Lily. As soon as he thinks that, the young lady delivers the finishing blow, and the commentator announces Lily's victory, saying she's the continuous reigning champion of the matches. It is unclear how many rounds the girl has participated in since the school event started, but Lily doesn't even sweat buckets, showing her superiority in strength among other students, which is impressive to Frey, given that he's the girl's closest teacher. The other young ladies in the academy acknowledge Lily's strength too, but it seems like their opinions are different regarding Frey. It reeks of disrespect, prejudice, and baseless hate. The professor calls them to talk about that professionally, but his attention eventually shifts to Lily, who rushes to him and asks his opinions regarding her performance in the matches. Needless to say, Frey is satisfied with what he has seen, and he feels proud of the achievements and clear improvements of one of his female students. The girl feels the same, and even calls the instructor's way of teaching the best in the whole country, but her expression turns into disappointment upon glancing at the group of her fellow girls fawning over the other teacher and praising him instead of Frey. Like how things were going in the past, the majority of students prefer to learn from the aristocratic professor rather than the ordinary high school instructor, completely disregarding his skills and capabilities just to focus on the man's status. Frey wishes to help the only student who believes in him not just in swordsmanship and magic, but in more things too. But Lily doesn't even want it in the first place, causing her to look sad and worried at the teacher about something. Fortunately, it's not grand or anything because Lily is just actually jealous of the students receiving head pats from the other teacher. Much to her disappointment, Frey hates the idea of having his students touch him and vice versa, thinking they should control themselves instead. Thus, Lily leaves after winning the battle and losing the war. But Frey is as dense as he can get because this guy assumes that the young lady is dispirited after he tells her a condescending message. Little does he know that the girl wants some palm on top of her head. Nonetheless, Lily's birthday is coming up, so Frey needs to come up with a beautiful gift to thank her because he's a teacher in this prestigious academy filled with nobility, and all an undeniably incredible feat for a commoner, which unfortunately is also a reason for someone to hate him. The dark transition ensues as days pass since the competition, and the next events become the start of a bitter season for Frey. In the hallway, an aristocratic teacher, Eris, mocks the now former instructor in the Royal Academy, making fun of him for being expelled. You heard that right, banished from his beloved dream school. All this starts when this female student and Eris's fiancé Maya frame Frey for doing something questionable to her, and to some other girls in the academy. Iris points the finger at him too for giving low-quality training to the future assets of their country, and calls Frey insulting names to showcase to everyone why he shouldn't be in their academy in the first place. But because of their non-existent years of friendship, Eris gives the man a chance to state his pleas only to see Frey walking out without a reply or anything. Eris stops him before he can completely leave, looking so twisted as he reminds the banished teacher that he has no right to escape his evil voice pestering him to mutter. Something haunts Frey, but the former teacher shows a fearless smile as he bursts into laughter to give the two a response that will shake their minds while Eris and his fiancée are wondering if Frey has gone insane. The man in question simply treats their hate as a matter of fact and is purely amused that Eris is determined to pull off a charade like this. He's not even angry or frustrated, which is humiliating for Eris, who went to such lengths just to get a response out of Frey. However, the aristocrat is not over yet, and this time he's using brute force to finish off Frey, knowing that the man will be imprisoned the moment he tries to defend himself or strike back. But what if Frey dodges? Swiftly, the former teacher dashes behind Eris without inflicting a counterattack, or anything shocking the nethers out of Eris. As the guy glances behind Frey and spots his target's bewildering movements, he then hits himself on the wall after failing to stop the force of his fists, worrying the other professors, as they quickly rush to Eris's aid to check if he's okay. But even if the aristocrat is fine, he has insufficient time to escape from the true teacher's lectures, advising him to learn some self-control because he looks like someone who badly needs it. Can I go home now, Eris-sensei? When Frey asks the question that evidently puts him on top against the respectable aristocrat, Eris simply groans in response, unable to do anything to defend his position as the one supposed to be superior. Therefore, he orders an academy staff member to catch Frey. But that proves to be impossible in the end, leading them to merely monitor the former teacher while he's walking away from the school grounds in the middle of it. Lily arrives panting after rushing to the scene as soon as she hears that her favorite instructor got fired. The young lady immediately questioned why things turned this way when Frey surely would never do something inappropriate to female students while teaching them. Apparently, Frey has never laid a finger on a girl, especially her except for the times that the former teacher is healing some students' injuries. Due to that reason, Lily is utterly disappointed, not to mention devastated, that Frey needs to leave because she'll be lost without him by her side. The girl begins crying as she tells the instructor that he's the one who formed her other half, so his absence is something that she will never recover from no matter how long it gets. Seeing the sobbing student awakens some sense in Frey, and he decides to caress Lily's head only to stop midway and refuse to grant the girl's wishes while staying true to his principles in the end. Still, he stops Lily's tears and ensures that the student who fully believes in him, and whose half is formed by their time together, remembers everything he has taught her over the years, with a smile that will forever be engraved in the lady's eyes. Frey assures Lily that it'll be fine as long as she focuses on improving. Those words also serve as his wish for the academy student. Instead of forcing her to protest at the school, he tops it off with a surprise gift aimed at easing her worries about him leaving the premises. Afterward, Lily puts the flower on, and she seems to like it so much that her tears gradually fade. In reality, it is an impromptu gift that Frey just happens to have in his bag, but it does the job. So the two proceed to make their promise to one another for Lily to hire Frey when she grows up, and ultimately turn him into a butler specializing in serving tea rather than teaching people. Unfortunately, Lily's curfew is drawing near, leaving the girl in tears once again, as they finally bid farewell to each other. Despite the framing up and the bitter goodbye, Frey walks home with strong memories. Futurary pie still pea range relief, devoid of sadness and rage. Even though the events commonly give someone the hunger for revenge, the question as to how he will live from now still remains. But Frey has no intentions of stopping in spite of the bitter reality of his vocation as a teacher being discarded. Finally, the scene returns to the mansion, where Rose is sprinting after heading outside for a bit, and is now on her way back to the room where the girls are gathered. Without revealing their faces, the young masters talk about the new teacher their father hires, some wondering what kind of person he or she is, one uninterested, thinking it will be no different from their previous instructors, while there are also those who are confident of themselves and see absolutely no use for the help of such a teacher. Of course, a mysterious character hiding her face in some hoodie exists, and she's quiet enough to just shake her head when asked if she thinks the mentorship will benefit her oh-so-strong self. Out of nowhere, the sound of a crunch steals their attention as the beautiful maid opens the door, gorgeously barging into the room to inform the young ladies of important news. Apparently, she is going to pick up someone, but for mysterious reasons, Frey's face shows up on her mind, hinting it greatly involves the currently unemployed former academy instructor, as if to boost that suspicion. Rose tells the 5 siblings that they will soon meet their next teacher. Before that, let's rewind the scene to the past sometime later to find out what's really going on. Since Frey gets fired from the academy, his parents apparently turn against him and scold the man to go home now that he had done something to a student, a behavior contrary to what they showed when in the prestigious school. Of course, Frey explains to them that the accusations are not true, and surprise, his parents don't believe the real story, which is similar to the folks gossiping about Frey while he's shopping. Now, the former teacher has become quite a celebrity shield hero type, unfortunately. After Frey walks a bit in the town with his heavy baggage of food, he arrives at his residence and opens the mailbox, leading him to discover an unusual letter, which is rare to see these days since he lost his job. The exact contents of the document are still unknown, but at its request, Frey wanders outside amidst the dark sky to meet the interested employer. On the way, an unimportant troublemaker calls out to him and mocks Frey for going to a night party at this time of the day. Well, they're the type that you won't see again in the next chapters, so I'll gladly call the leader Bottle because he's holding one. Frey is very much aware of it, so he utterly ignores Bottle even though the troublemaker doesn't seem to like it, which leads him to throw his name at the former instructor to get his attention. Before it hits him, Frey activates wind magic to stop the bottle in its tracks, then sends it back to its rightful owner, although in a painful way, as it makes contact with the man's cheeks. Not even giving him time to recover, Frey casts a spell that manipulates the floor and restrains Bottle along with his companions, promising to release them when the sun rises. Suddenly, he puts himself to a halt and turns around to bless Bottle with the attention he desires. In his words, Frey compliments the man for being an accurate shooter despite drinking too much, and he should apparently take advantage of his talent. Regrettably, Bottle fails to appreciate Frey's comments and is focused on belittling him. forcing the harsh reality that no one will take Frey seriously from now on. On that note, he opens the letter to read it once again, revealing that the content is a job offer to become a personal teacher, along with the map and the time and place when and where to meet up. Considering his reputation, it seems to be a bad joke that someone is still willing to give him a chance. But even though he's aware that it is strange, Frey comes to the location and sees a small hut hidden in the middle of the dark forest. Is this another trap like the one Arius set for me? Am I in for something dangerous? Although the cautiousness and suspicions are there, Frey decides to face it head-on as he is already here in the first place out of curiosity, or maybe even hope that something good will happen. The interior of the house is dark when he enters it, and the only light is the magical lamp Frey brings before visiting, allowing him to see absolutely no one inside the hut other than himself. Right when he thinks that it's just a prank, a maid shows up behind him out of a horror movie, saying she's been waiting for Frey ever since. Eventually, the woman's face becomes clear, revealing it is Rose, who, by an unknown method, enters the room without the man noticing. Frey has some questions about it, but the maid herself informs him that she's here from the beginning, which doesn't answer the former teacher's confusion. Nonetheless, Rose introduces herself and reveals she was sent by her master, assuring Frey that the full details of the offer will be handed to him in the mansion. However, Frey isn't accepting the job yet, and he asks some basic questions for starters to find out if this is safe or not. Apparently, Rose isn't good at explaining, or she just wants to omit the important details for now while giving Frey two choices: cross the door and come with her to the mansion, or leave and reject the job offer altogether. The answer? Frey faces the door and prepares to leave now that he confirmed that the proposal is really suspicious, not to mention dangerous, as he utterly knows nothing about the employer, where he is, and his objectives. At that moment, a thought crosses Frey's mind. Are there children taken captive in a place like this? Thanks to that, the man realizes that the true reason he comes to the hut, despite the possible trap, is because of the students. Worried about them, Frey turns to Rose's direction and tells her his willingness to follow and listen to what she has to say regarding the matter. The potential waifu maid remains expressionless even though Frey chooses to go with her. However, while guiding the former academy instructor toward the door that leads to the mansion, Rose suddenly mutters some music to Frey's ears. After all, she tells him that he's a good teacher. A question pops up in Frey's head, wondering what Rose exactly means, and if she accidentally happens to read through his thoughts like a magical mind reader. However, the real shocker comes after opening the door, because what greets Frey's eyes is a whopping large mansion appearing out of nowhere, and making the man dumbfounded as he stares at it with his jaw dropped. Upon looking back, however, Frey realizes that they're not in the forest anymore, but instead in a whole different place that Rose designates as a location point while using transfer magic midway. Still, there's no sign of chant recitation, so the spell must have been planted from the very beginning, leaving Frey more confused. In the end, Rose and Frey are left with no questions to ponder, although they will remain unanswered for much longer. Nonetheless, the hallway is vast and the whole interior is big, so they walk for quite a distance until Frey expresses his request to meet the students first before their father. Fortunately, it is the maid's plan all along, considering that her master is not here in the first place, because this castle is apparently only for the education of his daughters, not an entire living quarters. Although they came from different mothers, the students are all sisters, and they're residing in the mansion at the moment because their father thinks it is way more affordable and convenient if they live together. Thanks to this, Frey learns that his to-be students are girls, not to mention sisters. But one thing seems baffling to him: their own respective mothers? The maid confirms it without a hint of, "Oh, it's strange, isn't it?" making Frey more puzzled as he then wonders if the clients are illegitimate daughters of an aristocrat or something along those lines. Regardless of his assumptions, they finally arrive in front of the room where the ultimate first impressions begin. Frey enters it with a serious expression on his face and slowly walks to the center of the spotlight, glancing at the girls to see who they are only for his eyes to wide open in shock shortly after. For starters, the overconfident one, Anna, has strange horns on her head, the same as Isna, who has a pointy pair and is irritated that Rose brings a human as their tutor. The same goes for San, who sees no point in learning from someone not possessing a battle prowess far stronger than her. And it seems like the only one who's thrilled to see Frey is this young lady right here named Fia. Lastly, the girl in the cloak, Femme, says only one word, and it's not good for a decent person's ears, meaning she doesn't like the new teacher too. However, Frey is not really in the mood to mind those things, because all he can think of right now is the mythical appearances of the young ladies inside the room. From their horns, pointed ears, fangs, and he doesn't know what Femme is. Nonetheless, Frey pops up the question that will confirm their identity. These girls, are they demons? Rose answers it instantly with a yes and informs Frey that his students are not your run-of-the-mill devils, but the daughters of none other than the fearsome demon king, Hazar. And this is where the segment of the manga ends. If you like the story and want us to continue, yeah, let's do just that and get into the introduction of the human and demon world. For thousands of years, the two races have been in constant conflict, pushing back the balance of power in their respective realms, with the hero and the demon king being the center of it all. In the first place, Frey was working in a royal academy that trained the next generation of heroes, so it was unheard of that a man like himself would serve as the instructor of the demon king's daughters. Therefore, Rose is going to explain the crucial details of the job, until Isna suddenly gets up from her seat to stop the maid, completely refusing to have Frey as her teacher. On that note, Anna intervenes just to smugly tell Isna that she lost, which is confusing for the demon girl who has no idea what in the world her sister is referring to. Anna informs Isna of the obvious fact that this whole thing of living together is their father's ploy to determine who among the siblings will take his place as their race's ruler, although Anna is not so kind as to let Isna off with an insult. Nonetheless, it is their conversation that Frey learns that the lady with pointy horns is Isna, and he assumes that their seating arrangement means that the age order is from left to right. He instantly regrets his habit of matching up things, though. Still, the beef between the siblings is heating up because Isna is fed up with Anna's personality, which leads them to prepare for a fight inside the classroom, letting out their magical auras for an interesting 1-versus-1. Surprised, Frey tries to stop them until Rose assures him it's not out of the ordinary, and the two aren't planning to hurt each other seriously. Moreover, Sun is the only one who knows what's going on, and Anna is the only one getting a kick out of this because it's not intimidation or dominating the weaker one. But even if he understands all of it, Frey steps in between them without second thoughts, stopping the two from turning against one another and engaging in a brawl. Apparently, he disagrees that this is the right way to sort things out, mainly because it is stressful when such events occur every day. Shock is painted on the siblings' faces as they stare at Frey with complete astonishment, except Femme, whose face is still hidden in the shadows. Nevertheless, Frey manages to steal the girls' attention and measures their attention with his magical prowess to predict that the two of them are not good with magic. By putting himself between Anna and Isna's magical powers, Frey discovers that they have different attributes yet possess almost the same level of mana capacity. Therefore, if one of them casts an offensive spell, the former academy teacher can quickly counter it. Amidst the serious atmosphere, Anna lets out an amused laugh, looking so entertained at the events while turning away her attention from Isna. Afterwards, she returns to her room, confident that this is where the meeting ends. Frey breathes a sigh of relief upon hearing that, but the peace is short-lived as Isna approaches him to remind the man not to get conceited just because of his remarkable abilities. She makes it clear that they are not serious, so Frey is merely lucky to be able to produce the same magic amount as them. Oh, sorry, our protagonist here assumes it's a simple game between sisters, and it won't hurt to ensure nothing happens. Despite her embarrassment and evident rage, Isna leaves the room with a serious face, still refusing to acknowledge Frey as their teacher. One more trouble comes after another, this time with Sand deliberately calling Frey, only to kick his face and stop midway as if measuring his strength. She looks disappointed, though, as Femme has completely thought that Frey has better reflexes based on his interference in the fight earlier. Afterward, Femme jumps above the former teacher and lands professionally on the floor without injury or mistakes. But because Frey doesn't react or anything, the girls' opinions about him being boring don't change. In fact, they worsen. Thankfully, Fia is unlike her sisters because she immediately goes to Frey and apologizes to him for the rudeness of the four. However, this girl is not as confident in her strength as them, fully knowing that she doesn't possess an incredible talent, which leads the girl to promise to do her best to train with the instructor's guidance. Like the others, Fia returns to her room shortly afterward until she suddenly trips on the floor and falls in the arm of the teacher. Lily will go berserk seeing this. Frey then asks the long-eared girl if she's okay and confirms that everything is fine except the fact that Fia is blushing from fluster, and it's too early to say the reason. And here we all thought that Frey would never touch his female students. To be fair, he is willing to break that rule if someone is in danger. So Rose's remark is half-half acceptable, but in the first place, Frey is not accepting the job offer yet, meaning he's still not the girl's teacher. Fia panics upon hearing that, like Frey, who freezes when the young lady reacts, causing him to urge Rose to talk in a different location. In another room, Frey questions the reality of whether the five are really the daughters of the Demon King, to which Rose answers, with a yes as if there's no need to doubt it. In reality, Frey is just a little surprised at the new piece of information that one usually won't find themselves in, like the size of the castle, for example. Furthermore, Frey acquires a furnished room for free, which is impossible to get in his previous job for sure, that Eris surely receives the short end of the stick for trying to be malty. On another note, Frey remembers Anna saying that their education is to determine who is the most fitting to take over the position of the Demon King. Well, in this case, it is the Demon Queen, which is absurd for Frey as it is unprecedented for a human to train such a person. Therefore, Rose reveals that hiring Frey is actually the request of her master, eventually exiting the room and leaving the man the entire night to decide if he'll accept the offer or not. After walking in the long hallway, Rose enters a quarter where her fellow maid awaits, asking the woman if she thinks that the human will take the job without much of a push or persuasion, given that his race hinders Frey from granting the wishes of the demons. However, there's no need to worry according to Rose because she knows that Frey has 3 reasons to accept the offer. First, his bad reputation prevents him from getting a job in the human realm. Secondly, the complications of serving demons are genuinely negative for humanity. But Frey has a sense of protection between good and evil, and moves based on that. Nonetheless, Frey mulls over his decision carefully, ultimately realizing that he can't keep stumbling over the same stone for the sake of himself and his parents. Speaking of stumbling, Frey remembers Fia and the accident earlier, as well as the girl's strange hopes for him even though they just met. Maybe she's judging him after witnessing his intervention in the fight, but whatever the reason is, turning down the job means Frey won't see the girl's determination again. The sunshine strikes in the castle's classroom first thing in the morning the following day, where the Demon King's daughters are sitting in their own seats while waiting for the next event to unfold. Unfortunately, the 4 are not that looking forward to it, given that the expressions they're showing vary in shock, displeasure, and still unknown. The reason seems to be the man standing in front of the class, greeting everyone good morning while at the same time looking momentarily at Fia, who is clearly the only one happy to see the instructor attending the lectures, expecting so much from Frey perhaps because she wants to regain her lost confidence with the man's help. Meanwhile, Rose watches on the sidelines, the conversation with the other maid last night reverberating in her head as they talk about the 3rd reason why Frey will certainly take the job. That is, after all, being a teacher is the man's vocation, and he won't waste the opportunity to reignite it since the bitter end in the Royal Academy. With that said, Frey officially introduces himself to his new students and declares that, as of today, he is now their teacher. Despite the hype in his declaration, however, San is not hiding her disinterest in even listening to the class with her eyes open. As a result, she fails to see the chalk traveling in the air at tremendous speed, eventually hitting the girl right in her forehead. As a matter of fact, she gets enraged and asks what in the world Frey is doing, even though it's evident that the man is just waking her up. Just look at his face, which is devoid of entertainment level. For the girl, human classes are apparently boring. Now, I don't know what demon classrooms look like, but one thing's certain, and that something shocks San to the very core. Why does Frey know her name? Right when the girl wonders if it's the effect or magic or whatnot, Frey reveals that he just read their files. Ultimately, Fia tells San to listen to what their teacher has to say, allowing Frey to ask the siblings to please introduce themselves, specifically for him to hear the girls' names and skills from their own mouths. Anna starts per Frey's requests, and humbly says she doesn't have special skills except for swordsmanship, which really means, I'm good at anything and you have nothing to teach me. On the other hand, Isna proudly declares that she's good at anything, especially magic. By the way, this lady holds the most animosity toward Frey, while San is the second, that cheerful and oh-so-friendly girl who says she's good at physical exercise. Finally, Fia introduces herself as the 4th daughter, and one who possesses 0 remarkable abilities, which is no way she means it like Anna does. Nonetheless, Frey hears Fem's surprisingly young voice when she mutters her name for the new instructor to learn, although the girl doesn't bother to speak the skills to which she specializes. However, can Frey get to know them more in 3 months? At this point, there's no assurance that the teacher can last longer than that, mainly because of what Rose told him earlier in the morning, that Frey's employment will be determined to continue or not by a test that will take place in 3 months. Frey is having a peaceful breakfast at that time, but he still inquires about the contents of the exam, only to learn that Rose can't spill the entire details, and the single clue she hints is that Hazar will evaluate his daughters where their particular skills stand out. Presently, Frey is contemplating the matter and the method to take advantage of his short time, when Anna suddenly calls out to him to ask what his first lesson will be. Of course, the subjects of the classes are the human's own choice, rather than following the steps of the previous teachers, so he plans to start off with the basics that are not nerve-wracking at all. With a smile, Frey announces that the exciting lesson will focus on arithmetic, something that San immediately dozes off before it can even start. Clearly, she's not interested in anything other than physical training, making it challenging for Frey to catch her attention even though he presents it in an exciting light. Plus, the instructor is sure that arithmetic is what San needs right now. Surprisingly, it causes the girl to turn around and face the teacher's direction, wondering what he means by those words. The one who's kind enough to intervene and answer that is Isna. But what the girl shows is Frey's inability to teach them advanced things. That's why he resorts to arithmetic, or so she assumes. Nonetheless, Isna looks down on the human race as well as Frey's ability to teach them magic, which leads San to imitate her, concluding that the teacher is simply covering up for his weakness. Among the siblings, Anna's reaction stands out strangely, quiet, and annoyed that Isna is infecting San with her typical attitude that is not good for kids. She has a point, however, so Anna challenges Frey to demonstrate his martial arts ability for them to determine if he's really skillful or not. Indeed, the Demon King is behind Frey's employment, but Isna's suspicions can't be ignored either, so his job qualification will be to defeat San while in the unfortunate case of failure. Then it goes without saying that it's goodbye. Needless to say, Fia wants her sisters not to disturb the teacher and just go on with the lessons instead of refusing them like Gotubin shenanigans. But these girls are ruthless. They don't even listen to the kind-hearted cinnamon roll, causing Fia to be speechless as she cries on the corner, unable to fight back at the two. To their surprise, Frey approaches San, stealing her attention before releasing a confident battle aura and tells everyone that he's willing to fight if that's how they want to settle it. Although Frey really wants to simply warn them it's a bad idea and explain the importance of arithmetic through words, the teacher is aware he needs to be recognized first to be able to educate the Demon King's daughters. Thus, Frey and the girls go to an open field to begin the duel. But Fia is so worried that she warns the instructor not to continue because San is very strong to the point adults are no match for her. Apparently, San is also a good fighter, but Frey doesn't see any problem as it won't be a grand fight in the first place, and is just part of the class given that he's not on his mind. However, the girl is so insulted at what he says that as soon as Frey releases the go signal, she swiftly charges toward him with a fierce attack and violent eyes. The critical blow creates an impact, but San senses something strange as Frey remains standing while blocking the hit using one hand. Frey counters without moving in place to eliminate the girl's footing, but San's athleticism allows the girl to engage in sick movements and utilize them to gain the upper hand. But with Frey's position, he is confident of defending himself from any attacks by the young student, who he assumes she has a mother belonging to the Dark Elves, a race that possesses flexible bodies and agile mobility, which explains why San specializes in physical activities. Moreover, they are blessed with high magical power that allows them to be converted into strength, giving San an advantage in fighting average adults, unlike when faced with a former instructor in a Royal Martial Arts and Magic Academy. While watching San's continuous offensive to the new instructor, Isna lets out an amused smile as she confirms that Frey is merely acting strong, but can do nothing but defend himself in an actual duel. No, is what Anna has to say regarding the matter though, knowing that Frey is successfully handling all the attacks, which leads her to finally realize what the teacher means by saying that arithmetic is what San needs to get stronger. Thus, the next thing they look at the field is when San gets knocked down, and Frey is on his way to deliver the finishing blow, although he ultimately stops midway because further violence is unnecessary. Instead, he asks the girl if she's satisfied, letting her continue if she wants, but hears that San is wailing and complaining about what she's done wrong, and why victory is unattainable for her, even accusing the opponent of cheating. Now that's childlike. In the end, San tells Isna that Frey must have used a sly magic spell even though it is promised to be a normal physical brawl, but Isna fails to sense any signs of magic in the training grounds. Hearing the girl asking why she's been defeated, Frey reveals reading San's gaze, breath, pace, time, the flow of the force, yada yada to take care of her movements, a method that'll boost San's strength if she masters it. As the last straw, Frey orders the girl to train her thinking, because that's what arithmetic is for, causing San to tremble in frustration, as Frey might have overdone his lectures this time for it to backfire instead. Suddenly, San vanishes in thin air after jumping from her position for a second round, so Frey quickly prepares himself only to get restrained by the young dark elf, who clings herself to his back. Unexpectedly, San has a bright smile while expressing how great arithmetic is based on the man's words, as she finally acknowledges him as her teacher, even urging Frey to teach it so she can become more powerful in no time. Of course, it's just the first step, but it seems like thanks to this, Frey decides not to encourage his students anymore, because according to the students' files, the third daughter is a really cheerful and kind person, and now San is not hiding it. Thus, now that Frey has gained the trust of 3 out of the 5 sisters, he goes to another one, which brings us to the training grounds again, where Isna showcases her magic prowess and casts a fire arrow to burn a huge tree. With destruction as a background, Isna proudly presents her reel to the human. making it clear that she won't show Frey mercy despite his victory against San. It's all serious, but then there's the gorgeous maid stealing the spotlight with her sign. Back to the action, Isna challenges the teacher to give it all he has to measure the difference in their powers, only for her to cry afterward. Watching Isna in her dispirited state while sitting in the classroom worries Fia and San, but they are not surprised that things have turned this way, because apparently Frey casts 2 fire arrows and achieves a larger achievement than the other 2. In other words, Isna is a magical girl. Nonetheless, Isna's wrath is so intimidating that Fia immediately escapes with the pretense that she'll go and get the instructor. As expected, Isna's irritation at Frey just skyrockets as she clicks her tongue in frustration, assuming that the man is feeling proud of himself right now. Yeah, he is proud, really, not stressed out at all. Currently, Frey is in another room with Rose, worried that Isna is feeling insecure after the magic lessons. Of course, the maid won't question Frey's teaching methods, but she'll ask why he bothers to show his strength if this state of mind is what he'll receive in the end. After diverting his gaze for a second, Frey reveals having the same problem in his days at the academy, the pressure to maintain a certain behavior. Unaware that Fia is accidentally listening, Frey continues talking about his past challenges to ensure that the students respect him, although the result is, as you already know, because he's dealing with the aristocrat's education. Lily's face surfaces in his mind, however, as one of the students along with the commoners who listen attentively to his lessons. But now Frey is wondering if I had shown some strength. Maybe the students would have acknowledged me. I could have helped more children improve their talents. For Rose, even if those human students come to want to be taught by Frey, the hierarchy will likely get in the way, and they will still choose to be educated by nobles. However, as a teacher, Frey regrets not resorting to desperate means that may prove to be more effective. That's why he's afraid of ruining the chance and strives to do his best, which for Rose is something commendable, thinking that Frey is a teacher who learns, grows, and struggles like an average person. Hearing the maid's comforting words lifts the man's soul, and he might have found the end game. But reality just won't grant our wish because Rose simply wants Frey to overcome his hurdle, or else it is departure to another world in 3 months. Meanwhile, Fia, who overhears the conversation, is surprised that even a strong instructor like Frey is dealing with uncertainty, giving the girl additional motivation to do her best for her and the teacher's sake too, although I think she needs to work on not tripping. She's also worried that the teacher's words might be tripping on the floor first. In the library, where silence is the norm and books are the authority surrounding you on all sides, Frey can be seen wandering in hopes of talking with Isna, wishing to the gods she's not too upset about being reminded who's superior. Eventually, he sees her reading a book and instantly assumes it's about the psychology of demons, only to hear that Isna is actually doing her best to start with the basics, so as not to get defeated by the teacher once again. Frey smiles in satisfaction while watching the young lady familiarize herself with the elementary principles of magic, and decides it's best to leave her alone for now. Therefore, Frey chooses to look for an interesting book instead and read it somewhere else, clueless that Isna actually notices his presence. He's in plain sight anyway. Nonetheless, after that, Frey sits outside to read a book peacefully, until San pops up out of nowhere and hugs her teacher from behind. She wonders if he's looking into some legendary martial arts knowledge or arithmetic, so Frey gets up and proudly declares that he is reading a tale titled Earth Terra the Story. Wow. Clearly, San is so interested that she has lifeless eyes while staring at the instructor and listening to his storytelling about the novel series that takes place in a purely fictional world called Earth Terra, where phones, buildings, and pew-pew exist among all other futuristic things that are 100% imaginary. Out of the interesting aspects, the most fascinating for Frey is the main character in Volume 3, a person whose characteristic pose leaves a mark in people's hearts. Unfortunately, it turns out that it's not just the pose, whatever the character is, leaving because San is already walking away, stunning Frey in astonishment as he simply watches, silently. Frey is so sure that it's popular in any gender and age, but he has never actually been in a community that loves reading. Not to mention it's a shocker that there is human entertainment in the demon realm, though the novel's final volume is MIA. Nevertheless, San finally acknowledges Frey as their teacher. Fia supports him more and more, and Isna comes to accept the man as a worthy instructor too. Regarding Anna, we are brought to the training grounds, where the confident lady is practicing her magical abilities, specifically replicating Frey's magic without difficulties whatsoever, enabling her to discover that the human is not using his full power. With that said, she's excited to have a real match against him someday, and for that, Anna will continue testing Frey despite not expecting him to be a great teacher. Rather, she views the man as a human employee and a mere plaything for her. The self-proclaimed queen of the castle, which is also in respect to the enigmatic character Femme, who has been gone long enough for Frey not to know anything about her except the girl's name. As the scorching flame ensues, Anna proclaims that Frey must get along well with the other two, so he can achieve his ultimate goal driven by his vocation. Strangely enough, however, Anna notices the fire suddenly extinguishing for unknown reasons, causing the girl to wonder if she has used up all her magical energy, or if there is some other explanation for the sudden phenomenon. Regardless of what it is, Anna chooses not to care, and just turns her back on the damage she has caused. Meanwhile, Frey also senses something strange in the fire, which is the fire of the demon realm. The demon realm is a forest near the mansion, so he leaves to take a look, unaware that Isna is snooping on him like some kind of Eshon, wondering where he'll go and what his weaknesses are. Eventually, Frey reaches a tree with evident scorch marks, the one that Anna used as a target dummy for her magic, although the teacher doesn't know it. Nonetheless, Frey sees clear footmarks in the ground, so naturally he will follow the tracks to see what it is, leading the teacher to wander in the forest further and further away from the castle, as long as the footprints are still appearing. Eventually, Frey reaches the end of the trail and encounters a gigantic tree where Femme is surprisingly shutting herself in. The girl is so taken aback by the teacher's appearance that she stutters, while Frey wonders why the little lady is here in all places. Unfortunately, he realizes that this may be Femme's secret hideout, meaning that she will surely hate him now that he knows about its existence. Amidst that, Frey catches sight of the last volume of Earth, Terra, the story from the girl's hands, which turns his nervousness into excitement while, on the contrary, dumbfoundedness on the Demon King's daughter's side. She blushes and asks if Frey also likes the book, so the teacher replies by showing the novel along with a long grin. Little do they know that Miss Isna is still in the area, silently spying on the two from a tree's shade, ultimately deciding to step closer to find out what they are talking about and punish the man if it's inappropriate. In reality, Frey and Femme are conversing about the book they share a mutual interest with, allowing the teacher to know a little more about the girl, even if a bit. So far, Frey discovers Femme's shyness and hobby of reading, some indicators that mean she's still a child. Unfortunately, their happy time ends when Isna accidentally cracks a small twig, making a sound that shocks the heavens out of Frey and the demon girl as they immediately look in the direction, although the former instantly returns his attention to Femme, who stumbles shortly after. With his eyes wide open, Frey stares at the Demon King's daughter in astonishment, speechless, as he watches the little child whose face is undeniably mesmerizing after her hood gets unveiled. Femme lets out a single noise in response to the noise, but the child is still in a very awkward situation, as Frey faces her white hair and skin, which is not exactly colorless as it seems. Rather, they are almost transparent, as the falling leaves can be seen through the child's body. This causes Femme to panic, and she screams continuously at the top of her lungs, shouting one yell after another due to her disoriented mind. Before Frey can even conclude that the girl's mother is a ghost, an enormous sphere of mysterious magical power appears out of nowhere, uncontrollably wreaking havoc on the premises and shattering the precious volume of the novel she loves. The result? A wide-scale destruction ensues in the area where the ominous ball materializes, and it has been a few hours since then. In the castle's large bath, Isna is bathing herself due to the incident, looking so worried while thinking about her youngest sibling. Soon after, she hears Anna's voice calling out to her as she barges into the bathroom wearing a birthday dress, fully assuming that the place will be enjoyed only for herself, which is unfortunately not the case because Isna is here in the forest. Anna mentions the episode that inflicts tremendous damage on the premises and comments about Isna becoming fine despite the threat, causing the lady in question to remember Frey's gentle face, asking if she and Femme are just fine. It turns out that when the enigmatic sphere emerges, the teacher summons a barrier to defend himself and his students. Although because he's on top of them, Isna blushes simply while recollecting the events, so that's where the first flashback ends. Out of nowhere, Anna blurts out Frey's name, triggering a reaction from Isna, even for her confidence, is just asking if the instructor is in the place of the incident too. Hold up, what in the romance is happening here? Putting the blooming love aside, Frey told Isna earlier that Femme is locking herself in her room and he's troubled as to what to do. So the teacher decides to talk about the matter with Rose while advising Isna not to inform the girl what has really occurred. In a dark room where the candles the maid holds are the only thing that serves as illumination, Frey corners Rose by accusing her that she knows something regarding the incident. Rose's expression darkens as she looks at the instructor with cold eyes, ultimately revealing that cases like this are not out of the norm around Femme, although it is the first time that an accident on this level falls upon them. Thanks to her mentioning the incidents, Frey remembers something similar in the student's file, specifically the breakage of magical tools and the zero magic depletion. Hearing those terrifying phrases from the maid turns Frey's mind into blank, and at the same time an absolute abyss that leads him to blurt out absurd things, a demand to learn Hazar's opinions. Rose acts like she doesn't know what the man is talking about, but she does. So the teacher makes it clear that what he desires to hear is the Demon King's plans for Femme and her unknown energy. Most of all, can she be allowed to stay here? The scene returns to the bath as Anna guesses that Frey is currently talking with Rose about what to do with Femme, shocking Isna as it is a pure hunch, and she doesn't reveal it to her in the first place. While she's pouting, Anna shifts to her serious mode and mentions the mysterious magical phenomena happening around Femme, implying that the magical blast is hard to cover up from somebody's suspicious glances. Still, Anna believes that it was all an accident, and Femme has no ill intent, leaving Isna with an obvious question to her sister. How can you talk so calmly about this? For Anna, the fact that they are competitors for the throne will remain unchanged, and she's aware of Femme's options, such as being isolated from them, going home to her mother, or something more extreme and perhaps dangerous to the young girl. Once again, Frey and Rose's discussion enters the screen as the former can be seen bewildered upon receiving freedom on his actions regarding the incident. Put simply, the maid entrusts Femme's fate to a man whom the child doesn't even fully know. Frey lets out a wry smile as if to mock the demon and her boss for their decisions upon realizing this has been their plan since the beginning, even though the human can just take the matter into his own hands and end it mercilessly once and for all. Of course, Frey hates to resort to that method, even as a joke, so the maid proposes to handle this differently instead. Although it's just her personal opinion and there's no proof to prove these next words, Rose announces her assumption that the demon is the one who's behind the incident. King really wishes for Frey to guide Femme into the right path and not cruelly send the girl into the lifeless chasm. Confused, Frey confirms if it means that he must teach Femme how to control her powers, which is somewhat reasonable so the child can live a normal life, but it is still so complicated that stooping on the cruel plan is actually easier. Nonetheless, Femme's smile when they talk about the novel is so precious that Frey arrives at a decision much quicker. Thus, with fiery eyes filled with unwavering determination, he ends the discussion and heads toward the girl room. There, Frey stumbles upon Isna, who is merely standing in the hallway, immediately asking the teacher's motive for visiting her sister. However, Frey completely ignores the irritated lady and goes straight to Femme's chamber, calling the child's name to get her attention, albeit unsure if the young girl is really listening in the first place. To be fair, she is, but Frey is standing in front of a closed door, so confirming it is out of the question. Although it's not necessary because he's here to assure the ghost that they are fine despite their tattered clothes. Unaware that Femme is breathing a sigh of relief, Frey proceeds to his question and asks the girl what it is that she desires. Due to her powers, it'll be hard to continue living in the castle, so if she wants to return to her mother, Frey has no plans to disagree with it. Unfortunately, he incurs Isna's rage nonchalantly saying that, but the teacher's monologue is not over yet, this time focusing on his actions when Femme decides to stay and control her power. In the off chance that she chooses to do that, Frey promises that he will offer his full assistance as their teacher. Following the conversation, Frey does something strange that stretches out further from Isna's understanding. But the next scene shifts into the room's interior, showing Femme moved by the oath of her new instructor. Suddenly, the conversation between the female child and Frey ensues as the girl shows her hands hidden by the long clothes, talking about the signature pose of the protagonist in the novel's 3rd volume, something that the teacher likes the most. In fact, he talks about it excitedly, thrilled that the main character makes the gesture with his companions when sharing their happiness, faced against a challenging adversary, or talking about hope. Utilizing the pose that symbolizes trust and vows, Frey raises his hand and does a thumbs up with a serious face, pledging to help Femme seize full control of her power and continue living in the mansion. Eventually, San and Fia also arrive in the hallway where Isna and Frey are standing in front of Femme's room after the teacher makes his declaration. The two immediately ask about the actual happenings in the event, and if Femme is all right. But before explaining everything, Frey urges everyone to move to another place first. In the classroom, the teacher reveals some of the contents of his discussion with Rose, as well as his plan to become Femme's mentor and guide the girl to control her power. Worried, San offers assistance to help the child willing to do anything without hesitation to save their youngest sibling. Unfortunately for San, the only way she can help is by engaging in self-study, which is a real shocker for her because it's clear she expects to do some grand stuff like playing detective or something. Nonetheless, Frey plans to teach Femme separately from now on as it is safer this way, so it'll be a lifesaver when the others study on their own, allowing the instructor to concentrate. With that said, He shifts his attention to Isna and assigns her the ultimate task of keeping an eye on San and Fia while he spends time with a loli in the woods. At first, she's like, "Is this a joke?" But halfway, Isna turns all tsundere and orders the instructor to bow his head and say, "Please," if he's really sincere. She's the one who demands it, but Isna is so complicated that the lady can't believe Frey is doing what she says wholeheartedly, begging her to look after San and Fia. Apparently, Isna is enraged that the scene portrays her as a villain who hates helping her sisters in need. But maybe Frey is actually a pro in handling these tsundere, as he gently thanks Isna for accepting her request, even though she hasn't said anything to affirm it yet. Regardless of the pouting demon girl, Frey asks another person who is hiding in the classroom's corridor, allowing Anna to show herself now that there's no point in concealing because the teacher has already caught her in action. Nevertheless, Anna immediately agrees without issuing a condescending order like a particular lady out there who has questionable hobbies, although obviously Anna is just infuriating Isna for the sake of it. As Frey expresses his gratitude, however, Fia interrupts, wondering if the teacher will start Fem's lessons as early as tomorrow morning, only to learn that Frey needs some materials first, and until they arrive, Fem must stay in another private room in the Demon King's villa. On the other hand, Frey heads to his office to research the signs of the mysterious ball, and hints about Fem's enigmatic powers. However, the information available is so scarce that the instructor only finds out about Ghost's preferences not to engage in combat and live a secluded lifestyle. Sounds familiar? In addition to that, Fem belongs to a race whose main characteristic is their translucent body, so transparent that even water can be seen through when they are cleaning themselves in a bath. That aside, the night ends without us even noticing it, and Rose enters the teacher's room to greet him a good afternoon after checking on Fem in the villa. Frey has dark circles forming in his eyes after waking up all night, eventually apologizing to the maid for increasing her workload, albeit it is already mountains piling up. But before Frey can get up and visit Fem, thinking he should be with her every day, Rose tells him it is not necessary, and it's the child's wish to stop Frey from coming daily. This is for Frey to have some time to rest, as Fem can't help him in any way except enduring her loneliness and making it do with Rose right here. Most of all, the ghost lady believes in her teacher's promise, leading the maid to assure Fem that Frey will surely live up to her trust. Okay, that's it. Rose finishes telling the story of how she serves as a great supporter for Frey, so the man thanks her for it, even though the maid sees no need, as she simply conveys some words. Still, Frey shows a heart-throbbing smile, while expressing his happiness regarding Rose's reassurance to Fem that she could trust him, making the maid speechless for a moment until the lady finally mutters a word, wow, I think I get what she means. Nonetheless, Rose makes it clear that she leaves Fem's fate to him, because Frey looks like he can help, before eventually informing him of the shipment of the requested materials that will quickly arrive in just 2 days. Afterward, Rose exits the room, closing the door with an expressionless face until it suddenly turns into a flustered one, blushing for apparent reasons while contemplating Frey's voice. Meanwhile, the instructor is still in his room, planning to read more reference books about ghosts, although that plan will change when Frey remembers Fem wishing for the teacher to rest, causing him to fall asleep instead of merely napping. Speaking of naps, San is drooling in the classroom while listening very attentively to Anna, who is teaching her about arithmetics. Apparently, this is not what she thinks the subject is because what's lying in front of her eyes are all numbers and letters on the blackboard, having a little bit of skirmish and not an anime battle scene. Moreover, Anna is looking at her and the entire lesson like she can't imagine what it is all about, so San buries herself on her sister's chest, causing Isna to switch with Anna. Basically, the winged lady will be assigned to instruct Fia now, which leads them to the playground where the long-eared girl pants from exhaustion after the sudden physical exercise. Anna stops for a second to check on her sister and determine why she puts herself to a halt despite the couple hundred meters they cover, mainly because that couple of hundred is just small for Anna, who decides to head out first and grab 10 kilometers more before resting. Meanwhile, San is in the classroom contemplating her tedious life, when Isna suddenly steals her attention and reminds the elf to focus on her self-study about the basics of magic, instead of getting jealous of Fia and Anna, who are running outside. Hey, will we ignore the demon girl's change of uniform? For some reason, Isna turns teacher mode while mentoring San, and she's gung-ho on proving to Frey that the better instructor between them is her. Yeah, she want to be the very best that no one ever was. That aside, San isn't just bored as she expresses her concerns about Fem as well as Frey, who has shut himself in his room since yesterday. Isna doesn't mutter a word and simply stares at San until she ultimately tells her to believe in them, as that is their only choice from the beginning. 1 week later, Frey finally gets out of his office and meets Fem again after such a long time, because today marks the end of his life. It's the day of the ghost's one-on-one training with him. But in order for Fem to control her power, She needs to know it first. And for that to happen, they must see the ominous ball again and touch it. That said, Femme can't summon it on her own yet, making this challenging for them to proceed. Except that Frey actually has a trick up his sleeve to reproduce a situation for the massive energy to materialize. He looks in a different direction, as if glancing at a passing butterfly and wondering if it's Levi, ultimately taking Femme by surprise by forcibly unveiling her cloak without prior notice whatsoever. Silence ensues as Frey glimpses at the young girl whose face is once again revealed, deliberately shocking Femme as it is part of the teacher's plan for the reproduction of an event that triggers her magic power to come out. A small black orb appears out of thin air and gradually enlarges until it becomes bigger than their faces, which turns out to be Frey's perfect opportunity to create the debut of his secret weapon. Thus, he activates the glove in his hand and prepares to launch its oh-so-valuable feature to defend against the enigma. However, Femme is not aware of what the teacher is planning. Instead, she's afraid that her magic is going out of control again, and may cause another episode of tremendous destruction. But faced against the mysterious sphere of unknown energy, Frey stretches out his hand and casts the mechanism on the item he's wielding. It restrains the strong outburst that is connected to the young ghost, so Frey guarantees Femme that everything is okay. At least for now, though. Currently, the instructor is preventing it from blasting off with all his might, but the orb proves to be so powerful that there are instances of it close to erupting, and Frey is taking it all just to stop it, even for a second. Nonetheless, they can watch it for a little while now. So Femme casts away her puzzlement and observes the enormous orb for her to understand what in the world it really is. After having a staring contest against the enigma for a few seconds, Femme finally concludes that the black orb is a product of two elements colluding. Regardless of what those two are, Frey sends the sphere flying upwards until it reaches the sky, and that's where he ends the materialization of the overwhelming energy. Frey blows it up with a single clench of his fist. But if that looks cool, the teacher is not so relieved upon doing that as he suffers from the recoil of having his energy taken away from him by using the glove to restrain that thing. Still, he appears to be alright after catching his breath. So the student and teacher rest on a huge log afterward, where the former explains that the strange phenomenon is an unknown magic composed of two elements. She then apologizes for discovering so little, even though Frey tried his best to restrict its power. But in the end, they learned something, and that's a good thing. So for now, it won't hurt to enjoy some rest and a sandwich. On another note, Femme is amazed at Frey's glove, whom we will call Cane. No, that's not a name. Primarily, canes are instruments used for restraining magic, and they are called such no matter if they are shaped like a gauntlet, pillow, raging shield, or I'll leave it to your imagination. As a bit of explanation, Frey reiterates his plan to the young ghost. First, he'll restrain the orb's magic with the cane, while Femme observes the sphere thoroughly until she gradually understands her power, which increases the girl's level to suppress it, and Frey's help will be unnecessary anymore. Femme wonders if she can't just use a cane to accomplish the task easily, but Frey doesn't recommend it as a big brain move because wielding the item requires brute force, meaning it's not that omnipotent despite the effects. On top of the physical strength and stamina needed, the glove is wearing out too, and the materials Frey requests from Rose aren't endless, not to mention they cost quite a lot. And by that, he means a small country's budget. Frey can't even stop sweating merely thinking about it. Eventually, Femme realizes that the teacher created the cane himself just for her sake, and she looks apologetic about it rather than jumping for joy and celebrating. Now that she's sad too, although they have different reasons, Frey lightens up the mood by asking Femme if she feels admiration for someone. That's what I call random. Nevertheless, Femme is having a hard time answering. So Frey makes it more specific and wishes to know if the girl has a person she looks up to, wishing it will help her studies. Hold your horses right there, Frey-san. We won't let you cook. Although it sounds like the man is showing interest in the translucent ghost, Femme fortunately doesn't sense it with her innocent mind. Up next, we see Anna nonchalantly reading a book without a care in the world, until some excrement, not literally, comes flying onto her face. It turns out that the cause of it is sand sneaking a surprise attack while the opponent is preoccupied, only for Anna to block it casually. She goes at it for a while and releases a few more blows. But exhaustion gets ahead of the female elf, and she acquires defeat while Anna is, as you have guessed, still reading. Is that a forbidden novel or something? Soon after, Anna sort of blows her fuse and asks Sand to stop trying to score a battle practice because it is currently her hour of independent reading. So of course, putting down the book is out of the question. Nonetheless, Anna notices an immense change in Sand since she lost to their new teacher, and it's highly possible that the reason is the man's arithmetic advice. Hence, she laughingly suggests Sand read while fighting, saying it might be an effective way to excel in both the physical and intelligence departments. However, watching the dark elf leave prompts Anna to wonder about their differences, mainly in knowledge, personality, and fighting prowess. making her question the reality of the others being her father's daughter. Staring at absolutely nothing, Anna realizes her next step for the duration of the self-study: spend time with herself as well as her siblings. It is day 5 of Fem's training, and the ghost has gotten used to her powers at a considerable rate, making the training easier, but at the same time, repetitive, and now they're stuck without completely solving the problem. Furthermore, the exam is only 2 months away, meaning Frey must hurry to teach Fem to wield her powers so they can go back to others as soon as possible. Along their casual walk, however, the young girl catches sight of her sister, Anna, alone in the deep part of the forest. Before Frey can ask what she's doing here, Anna swings her practice blade and cuts 2 giant trees in one fell swoop before sheathing the sword to its scabbard. The sound of the weapon and the case closing signals the scorching flames to emerge and burn the target dummies for the winged lady's training, and Anna seems to be satisfied, incurring the rage of Earth's environmentalists. Even Frey acknowledges the girl's efforts of honing her swordsmanship and magical abilities at the same time, but it looks like Fem is the one who's more impressed watching her sister, as she looks so excited after witnessing the scene. Frey wakes the girl up from her daydream later on, which leads Fem to ask if it's okay to leave the fire like that, because it'll evolve into a more tremendous problem normally. On the contrary, it turns out to be fine, as the flames are apparently controlled by the caster by some magical essence, meaning that Anna, who possesses a lot of magic power, can direct it wherever she wants and burn it out by eliminating the said essence. Surprisingly, Fem isn't happy when she hears that. Rather, she's worried about her strength and abilities, which are significantly opposite to Anna's skills, given that the girl possesses confidence and can wield her magic freely. In reality, Fem holds great admiration for her sister, not envy and jealousy, so she brushes it all away for now and urges the teacher to start the lessons instead. As if the time limit earlier is not pressuring him anymore, Frey refuses and invites the child to walk around some more while talking about random things. Oh, like what to do with Bottle and his companions who are possibly still restrained in the town. Yeah, of course not. Planning to continue teaching Fem until she masters her ability, Frey guarantees the girl that she'll be as strong as Anna too, when she fully wields the enigmatic energy. Fem doesn't look like she believes him though, aware that her level pales in comparison to the teacher. Therefore, Frey talks a bit about his past when he's frustrated at himself for being the opposite of powerful, causing Fem to ask if he could be a better teacher than Anna. Fem's still feeling the same now. Frey answers it with a smile while deciding to make Fem love herself first before they proceed on the complicated and taxing stuff of the training. Thus, the teacher converses with the Demon King's daughter for a little more, revealing his reason for becoming a teacher and so on, until night arrives, and it's time for Frey to resume his research. In his room, the instructor studies various materials on ghosts, even though all the good references are gone. And all that's left is a collection of low-grade rumors and legends. In fact, Frey plans to forget about the books altogether and focus on the curriculum instead. But that's only until he stumbles upon a text with strange symbols and sees hope that it's the discovery he needs the most. Before that, however, we take a peek at Fem's inner thoughts, revealing she actually dislikes her face and transparent body, despite everyone saying it is just a unique trait exclusive to her kind. She hates being different from others and suffers from the negative stress for so long, but Frey's efforts to train the girl by putting himself in danger too seems to erase all of those gradually, until it comes to the point that Fem completely forgets about it. Later in the morning, the young ghost comments about her teacher looking so sleepy before they even start the private lessons, which, according to Frey, is because he found an interesting thesis, starts looking for the author's other works, and boom, where's the dark sky? Apparently, Frey explains his findings in an easy-to-understand way, and compiles them into a collection of papers for Fem to look at. There, it says that their world consists of 2 realms, one for humans and demons and the other for supernatural entities. That said, did Frey draw it himself? Of course, the first one who notices it is Fem, and she learns that the teacher even includes outfits from the girl's favorite book. That's why Fem is more preoccupied with thinking that the drawings are cute before she proceeds to really read the material, where it is mentioned that they live in the real world rather than the other one, which is known for being the realm of ghosts. The next information shakes the girl's mind, however, because what's written there is the reason why she's transparent. Simply put, ghosts are only half of themselves in the physical world. They are filled with a negative, magical essence that also serves as their source of magic. But because Fem has a mix of a demon in her, she appears to have a positive core from the Demon King, and the two blend together. Nevertheless, there's no evidence in the thesis itself, and Frey learns more about ghosts only in fairy tales. But the author of the text he read seems to fully believe in their existence. To further prove the theory, Frey recalls Fem calling the black orb 2 elements colluding, and assumes they may be the negative and positive essences. So the instructor ultimately concludes, the scientist is right after all. There's no beating around the bush, and Frey asks Femme if the source of her magical power is just like what he thought, eventually repeating the question to confirm if the girl can feel anything regarding the mysterious cores. With lifeless eyes, as if she discovers something miserable, Femme embraces a monotonous response, not even sure if the case is correct or not. Later, the training finally begins, although Frey is looking at his glove, which is already getting pretty shabby and is possible to give up after another 2 or 3 days of continuous usage, meaning Frey greatly needs to request the staggeringly expensive materials from Rose again. It's better not to think about the price. It's for the demon girl anyway. Strangely enough, Frey feels a little bit uncomfortable even though it's not the first time he'll restrain the magic, but that's no reason for him not to open his eyes and see that the black orb is surprisingly stable. Now that she has an idea what her ability is, Femme suppresses the ball of energy and immediately tells her teacher that it works, which causes Frey to laugh and compliments the child for being an absolute genius like Anna. From then on, Femme grasps the ability little by little and slowly learns how to handle it, albeit still scared of losing control once more. Fortunately, Frey has his cane to assist the girl, and he's thrilled to teach Femme until she finally achieves mastery of the sizable, ominous ball. However, Isna doesn't like what's going on as she glares at the dark clouds from the window of the classroom, piquing San's attention. Perhaps the lady senses a bad premonition, but for some reason, Isna dislikes the weather more and more today. It's okay. This tsundere is just worried about Femme and Frey, whom they haven't seen for a while now, or so San and Fia thought. The former even invites them to take a peek at their training. But Isna angrily scolds her afterward and reminds them that the main reason why they are separated from Femme is due to the possibility of the ghost accidentally harming them, which in return becomes a massive toll on the child's mental state. Then, why not climb up a tree and watch from there? For sure, not just anyone can come up with that. But thanks to San's suggestion, Isna caves in. Not to mention Fia also wants to go, so the three waste no time and immediately head out. Fia invites Anna before going, of course. But the winged lady is so preoccupied with reading that she utterly ignores her sister and replies with absolutely no words whatsoever. Thus, Fia leaves after bowing respectfully, turning around and facing the outside of the mansion, where dark clouds prevail. However, one more unfortunate thing is happening amidst the terrible weather. In the middle of the private training, the cane Frey uses to suppress the ball of magical energy breaks, and an unexpected catastrophe awaits the teacher of the deep and dark. And this is how this segment of the manga ends. Unfortunately, there aren't enough chapters to continue, but we will do so as soon as more chapters are released.